I just watched Matt's video about relationships and family and all this stuff and what happens when you try to say something to somebody about anything. And I would just like to throw my 2 pennies into the mix. He's not wrong at all in what he's saying, in that these these things are set up to divide. That's very much evident. Because we used to have the same discussions, you know. We would have flat earth stuff, and we would have... I mean, the discussions have gone on since the beginning with us, even with religion, because half of the kids were always like, what is this, you know, and asking questions, and it always led to some sort of altercation. And now it doesn't, at least not when I'm involved. I can tell that if somebody brings it up, then they're naturally gravitated, you know. It's like a whirlpool. You get in this whirlpool that's talking about any of the topics, and it just like sucks you down, down, down. So that's the natural tendency when anybody gets into these kinds of conversations. And it's kind of interesting at the same time, because you know that in sort of regular news, none of it is discussed whatsoever as far as challenging the narrative, because the official news is the narrative. It's not going to challenge itself. So even by engaging in this at all, even if it's just on a defensive level, you're still... that in itself is a giving, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is... they're probably feeling guilty for even discussing it, or even having the thought. It's like, you know, the doublethink thing with 1984. It's to that level with the people who are still in the fear cycle, because it just gets more and more subtle, and that's how the system was designed, to have the keys and cues get more and more subtle until eventually, like what Matt's describing, somebody will simply block at every turn, and there's no headway or anything, because the cues have gotten subtler and more subconscious and more underneath the surface. So whatever's displayed out front is just the final, you know, it happens like in a snap of a finger inside their setup. Like it's like, you know, you hear there's a little alarm going on inside, and then some internal forces are zooming over there to quell that. And then what comes out, I was describing it to somebody recently about how, like, you know, if you were to compare the human being to an actual computer system, because we share aspects with the computers, you know, maybe we are computers, I don't know. At least in certain timelines, people have become very computer-like, or lost all the emotions, you know, everyone's Spock. But if you were to liken the human being to a computer, the output for most people that comes out of the mouth is something that has gone through an internal process, and then it comes out, right? And so comparing it to the computer, what comes out of the mouth is, for the computer, what gets typed out on the screen, you know, what images are shown on the screen, what particular website is being looked at. That's a tiny representation of what the computer holds internally, and that's not even talking about if it's connected to the internet, right? So even if this computer is isolated and it's either on a local area network and connected to the few systems within the building, or else it's just by itself, even if it was by itself, the stuff it's putting on the screen, right, or the stuff that you're spitting out with your mouth, is an infinitesimal piece of what's going on inside. So if you can imagine, if this warfare, you know, the warfare on the human, to suppress, to, you know, harvest loosh, to do whatever, to turn everybody into computers, whatever narrative you want to follow, you know, if warfare is being waged on the human race for whatever reason, they're not going to battle with the screens talking to each other. Like, if computers were engaged in warfare against one another, they wouldn't, like, put themselves on a little rolly chair and roll each other up you know, so one computer's facing this way and the other one's facing this way, and they wouldn't like talk with words on the screen and voice coming out of the speakers and the other one would reply. That's ridiculous. So this is my opinion, of course, but that's how effective arguing with this superficial aspect of ourself, which is the small part, which is the words, you know, emotions, and the things that you present when you're giving an argument or something. It's ridiculous to think that a very complex battle that's involving all of existence as far as we know, you know, because all you have to do is think about the particulate stuff, you know, the nanobots, the heavy metals and the chemtrails, all of this. The war is not being waged with people arguing with one another. That's our sort of way of making it seem like it's not maybe as dire as it is, because, you know, we feel like we're doing something and we're accomplishing something when we just simply bring everything out. Like, we feel like we're bringing everything out, like this and this and this, and this makes so much sense, and this is, and then the other person blocks completely because, you know, the battle or the war has gotten the best of them already. So all of this stuff is happening internally, and they aren't even allowed to say, hey Matt, you know, that kind of makes sense, and I don't agree with you at all for the most part, but, and as well, you know, I'm your family, so let's just not have a huge argument. Let's just completely disagree and you know, give each other a hug and say I love you, and then as family, and then leave off, right? That can't happen either because of the battle that's happening internally. That's not possible either. That's why also I don't talk about the external stuff almost ever, because it's a complicated thing, and it's internal, and also your internal is what's connecting you to that, and your internal is supplied through invisible means that you can't see. Like if you're connecting to higher self, or the divinity, or the God, or the Godhead, or your guides, or your, you know, anything that you connect to, that your intuition, you know, that doesn't come from somebody speaking it at you. That comes from your meditating and your grounding, and you're allowing your body, which is a conduit, to open up to that which you allow. You know, you specify, I'm accepting guidance from such and so, and you make sure the language isn't confusing so it can't be misinterpreted that, oh, maybe a demon can come and talk. Like, all these things have to be worked out within yourself. And it's internal. It's all internal. If there's a battle going on, if there's a war going on, it's the unseen battle. And the fact that we see it so much in the external, the fact that it all makes such little sense in the external, means that there, you know, means there's some serious shit going on in the invisible realms. I'm not saying it's a hopeless thing or anything at all. It's never like that. The existence does what it does, and it's very dramatic sometimes, and sometimes it's very horrifying, and, you know, it's what it is. But at the same time, there's no reason to stick your head in the sand, you know, like having your own rational understanding, however you come to it, is essential for everybody. If an individual can't retain that rational understanding and also receive the basic things that humans need, like love, support, you know, genuine support, you know, the shelter, the food, and all that, if they don't have those and a logical, rational worldview, then that's insanity comes after that. And that's not even touching the psychotronic warfare and the induced insanity. That's just natural insanity. That's, you know, people need those things. So I think to understand a little bit better why it appears that the thing is trying to divide family from one another, is because it is. And also, even the religious texts say that. That's what Jesus said. I will divide father from son, and family and basically said he would tear families apart. And, you know, I don't know how Christians rationalize that within themselves, but every single worldview, every single one, to the person who is rationalizing it, it's the most grounded, solid understanding that exists. That's the main reason why one person can have a ridiculous, seemingly ridiculous worldview, backwards, whatever, cruel, and then another person can be arguing with them who has, of course, to them, you know, something that's very solid and genuine, and nothing is escaping them. That's why both sides can equally defend their position, and there is not a resolution to the argument other than, one, you do the forgive and forget thing, or let's agree to disagree, or let's part ways. You know, we're not even family anymore. We're enemies now. But what I found personally is with these issues, I personally just got tired of the cyclical arguments, and I could see that there wasn't probably going to be a resolution, so I just told the family, I was like, we're not going to discuss this anymore. If we're in the same room and you bring it up, I won't say anything at all, you know, and then that stuff went away. Of course, it doesn't go away completely. It stays in the minds and it comes out in speech. You know, the speech betrays the internal, but we can still be friends. You know, carry on a decent conversation about stuff that's not so serious. You know, and as far as persuading people, you know, of anything, that's just like off limits. At least in this realm. In the current situation, the current state of affairs, that's off limits. If you have some drive inside of you, some desire, some need to have somebody accept your worldview, that's gonna be a downfall for everybody involved. So essentially, again, this is my point of view. This is not any sort of truth, but from my point of view, the worldviews have to be allowed. They just have to be allowed. Otherwise, you separate yourself from people completely, right? And whatever it is that makes up your internal state must be absolutely not needing everybody's approval. Of course, you need some support for ideas that you're holding on to. But if you have enough support to make you, you know, comfortable in your worldview, in your universe view, whatever, then you just got to let the other ones be what they're going to be. And live the example of whatever wisdom and knowledge that you've gleaned from all the stuff you've been researching, conspiracy or not. Let your lived example, without telling somebody something or trying to persuade them of something, just let that be the example. And then they're free to either stay asleep forever, right? Or, you know, they'll come around their own way if ever, you know, but that's still none of our business. It could even come to some outright war or outright battle, because that's always the final spillover. When our internal battles aren't resolved properly, then, you know, we have bloodshed and carnage because it has ruptured out into the external. Once that happens, then you can tell that the internal stuff hasn't been able to resolve itself. But again, that's why self-work and searching very deep within you to find at least your own inner peace and not have the need to try and persuade somebody about something. That's essential, because if everybody did that, then, you know, it would just be allowing of other people to be how they are and appreciating that they're different. They're different from you. Because if it wasn't some super dire thing, then if you can't extrapolate out what is the very, very dire consequence of the family members not seeing any of it and sticking firmly to the official narrative, then it's fine for them to do that. if you can't see like this very serious repercussion from that. And you know, you could complain, well, all they talk about is sports and, you know, what's happening at work and whether the lawn has been trimmed or not, and I don't like that. Well, that's still just personal. That's like, so what? It's your family, so deal with it when you're there, and then go talk to somebody that you care about the discussion that you're having with them later. Yeah. I got a flat tire. That's gotta be meaning something, right? Anywho, those are my thoughts. That's my 2 pennies dropped into the bucket. See you later. Bye.